Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Amplify Your Business. Today, we're going to be talking to a business located in Canmore, Alberta. It is the Cor Welding or Custom Welding Company. And I have today my guest, Evelyn LaBelle, who is the co-owner and office manager at Cor. Welcome to the show, Evelyn.
Good morning, Lance. Thank you for having me.
So now tell me a little bit about what it is that Cor Custom Welding does, because it's not just a typical welding shop from what I can see online.
We specialize in custom welding and we do high quality metal work. We work with different types of clients, developers, contractors, trades, municipalities, Alberta Parks Canada, and we fabricate custom metal work. So it could be staircases, structural steel. We often repair chairlift for the ski hills, which is really interesting. So it is it's very diverse and varied, and it's always different every day. So we enjoy the challenges and the learning opportunities.
And so how long have you guys had your business then?
We had the business since 2007. So I guess that would make it almost 15 years this year. Yeah.
Yeah, time flies, right? Yeah.
It does.
What was the impetus for the business? Why did you guys start it then?
So at the time, my husband was working for the founder of the business in Canmore, which
Okay.
is Michelle and Pat Pinet. And I was managing the Department of Engineering at the town of Banff at the time. And the founders wanted to retire, and they offered Michelle the opportunity to buy the business. So then we started looking, and after 9 months of negotiating and try to finance, so we essentially refinanced our home, took a business loan, and took some vendor financing as well, and it all came together. And so it was that on May 7th, 2007, we became business owners. So that's kind of how it all started.
And so in that process then, to take the leap from being for your husband the employee to now being a co-owner, and yourself, then did you exit out of your work for the government, the municipality, and then went full-time into the business? Or was that a different type of transition there, a longer transition for yourself?
Yeah, so initially it was just Michelle doing, most of, the shop management, and also like he was doing the paperwork at like 5 o'clock in the morning and working in the evenings and working on the weekends. Like it was a bit crazy. And then at some point, probably maybe like 9 months to a year later, um, we became pregnant. We were expecting, and I decided not to go back to my full-time job. So then I transitioned into working for the business, and that took some of that load off, and also I had the flexibility with like a newborn. It was a bit more flexible that way with time, and so that's kind of how I made my transition.
So that must have been somewhat scary though, right? So you're buying a business, you have the extra, refinancing the house and everything else, and now you have a baby, and you no longer have that stable income from your source of employment as well. So walk me through a little bit of that, if you can recollect just the thoughts and the fears and everything else that was going on at that particular point in time.
Right. Well, at that time when I made a decision, it had almost been a year with the business. So we had a good sense of the sales. Like we knew that, it's kind of stable. We have some revenues and some projects. So we knew that if I was kind of making that shift, that there was going to be enough like for us to offer like a base that we could, live on and things. So, but the tough part was I really love that job, and it was very social. I had really great colleagues, so that part was hard leave, to a role that was a bit more in the background. So yeah, that part was a bit difficult, but yeah, we made the switch regardless. Yeah.
So now, in terms of the business itself, in 15 years, have you been experiencing a lot of growth? Has it stayed relatively flat? What opportunities, I guess, have presented themselves?
Right. So I guess we saw probably like three financial crises like in that time frame. So it was a bit of a roller coaster. They were, we started in 2007. The construction was really strong in Canmore, a lot of new buildings and a lot of new development. And then, there was that crisis in 2008, 2011, and then just like recently the pandemic. So yeah, we've seen some waves in the last 15 years for sure. Fortunately, it kind of coincided with the time that we had our kids, so we didn't mind being a bit less busy because it was at a time where we had just happened that we had our kids at the same time as those in 2008 and 2011, so it kind of worked out well and we didn't mind having a bit less work. So yeah, initially I think it was typical family service business, and it was definitely a crash course in business management because none of us had business background. But we learned as we went, and our team grew and our sales grew, and yeah, and then we came to a realization at some point in 2017 where we were in California and Santa Cruz camping for spring break, and we were like, okay, something needs to change because we were busier, and we were, I think, each doing the work of 1.5 person. So Michelle was doing more than you should. I was doing more than I should, and then from that point, we decided to change, the structure a little bit to have more flexibility and more sanity in our lives.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that's a common issue, right? As business owners, we're often wearing many hats and putting in those extra hours, and it can be quite exhausting. So how did you restructure things then to basically regain that sanity and put a little bit more work-life balance in place?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, when we had that sudden realization on a beach, like we decided that to promote one of our senior welder as a shop manager. So with this, then Michelle was able to step back and a little bit and work in a quieter office where he wasn't interrupted like every 5 minutes by phone calls, by staff or walk-ins. So basically we had someone full-time in the shop managing like the production, answering phone calls and all this, and then Michelle could work quietly in his office, quoting larger projects, going on site, looking at job, doing design. And then from that point on, like we saw it was a huge, like it was a good shift in productivity as well, because we were able to do more, and then just like overall just happier and a lot less stressed. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think there's a lot of people who are really concerned about taking that step of promoting somebody else to take on some of the tasks that you as the entrepreneur were really holding on to. And so
Mm-hmm.
when Michelle was going through that decision, and I'd imagine this was something that you were both involved in and discussing. Was that nerve-wracking in the sense where, okay, he's going to have to release some of his sort of control or influence on what was going on, and almost feeling like he's um, not less important, but more so that you're empowering somebody else to make decisions that typically would have been Michelle's decisions to make. And so was there some concerns there at the time, and a little bit of back and forth as to, okay, well, do I really want to let go of this control or not?
Right. Yeah, I think that part was easy because I think by the time it came, he was ready for that. Like it had been 10 years and he was ready to, to um, let that go. And I think he trusted also. We have really good staff. He trusted that he could rely on our team.
Yeah.
I think the difficult part is probably when you make that shift initially, it feels like more work, right?
Mm.
Because you want to mentor the person, you want to train. So initially, it feels like you're doing your old job, and then you're training that new person at the same time. So it is an investment of time
Yep.
and money that you're making, but it's really worth it. Like afterwards. But when you're making that shift for a few months, it can feel like it's more than it was before.
Yes, that's a really, really good point because there is definitely an increase in the amount that you have to do. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are resistant to making that change is it's like, okay, thinking through how am I going to now mentor that person? How am I going to train them? How am I going to set things up? And oftentimes with that comes with, for a lot of businesses, the need to really create procedures and policies and so on so that things are executed the way that you would want it to be executed because you can't be as hands-on on it, so the people you're entrusting have to make sure that they're going to be following the right procedures and making the right decisions, right? So
Yeah,
so it can definitely create that extra bit of work. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to relate it back to myself, and the same thing as we've grown at different stages. It has been difficult, but what I love about it is what you were saying is that it's well worth it on the other side, because what it does, we as the owners and operators oftentimes are the pinch point, right? The squeeze point within the company in terms of we have just too many things, and so we're the resistor in the sense where it slows everything down. So if you can multiply yourself in by distributing some of that responsibility, then you can really enable the business to expand then. And that sounds like what happened then. You were able to grow because your husband was able to spend more time doing the things that were really going to drive the business forward.
absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And because he had suddenly the space and time to look at larger projects, and we started, taking larger commercial projects, which, are more profitable. So it just overall like really drove the business up, and just like, overall, it was definitely like a really good decision to make. Yeah.
So besides that, then can you share with us a few other lessons that maybe you guys have learned along the way through this entrepreneurial journey over the last 15 years?
Yeah. So, based on that success with Michelle's transition, we did the same with my role in 2019. So yeah, we hired a full-time office person in 2019, and that allowed me to work more um, on the business than in the business. Again, those strategic projects that you want to get to, but that you don't have enough time for. So
Yeah.
so that's kind of where, on the office side, that's kind of where we became like more efficient as well. um so again, I think like the lesson learned there is, don't try to do everything on your own. And hire up and staff up, that's, I think, one of the lessons that we learned. And if I had to do things differently, that would definitely be one of them, to do this process a bit sooner, like in our cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good point too. Just in terms of the reflecting back and looking at things through that rear view mirror and going, okay, well, I wish I would have done that sooner or slightly different. Is there any other things when you think back, knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently had you had the opportunity or that knowledge at that time?
Yeah, I think this one is, yeah, I think that's kind of the only, like, my only regret, if you would, like, for the business. Like, staffing up sooner and stepping, like our, kind of restructuring our roles sooner, like in our business. Um, and I think that's all I can think of.
So,
You can pause
so
this one.
yeah, I'd be curious to just dig into that just a little bit deeper, because one thing, like as entrepreneurs, we hear this all the time, right? This isn't all of a sudden it's like a novel thought, but there is so much resistance oftentimes, or we just don't get around to it. Any thoughts that you might have as to why entrepreneurs have a difficulty in making those moves, making those steps, staffing up, getting more efficient? Do you any insight there that you might be able to share from your experience as to why entrepreneurs maybe don't get there as quickly as they should?
Right. Well, I think that, that's a good question. I think, as you mentioned before, I think, because it is a bit more work initially, you're already at sort of a tipping point, like you're already at a level where you're doing like so much and so many hours. And the thought of hiring someone, mentoring someone, training, advertising for a position, like all of this, it is like on top of what you're already doing, and you're solo in the office at that point, or you're solo in a shop, and you're asking for that extra work, and it just seems kind of an impossible task. But I think you have to have the faith and really look at that kind of end point, and think, okay, well, I know this is hard, but it's going to help me. I think you really have to keep that vision like in your mind, and as a motivation, I think, to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're bang on. It's just that one more thing to have to do. And you already have a task list. Most entrepreneurs, anyway, have a task list that is very long, to-do list that you never seem to get it cleared off. And so it's just one
Yeah.
more thing to add to it. And it's easy to kind of push it off because you're dealing with the now. You're
Yeah.
dealing with the things that need your attention today. And this is more of a forward thinking requirement, right? And so it's very easy to push off.
Yeah. And you don't know like how good it will be like afterwards too, like once you've made that switch. So I think if you knew, if you had that vision of yourself in the future, with that structure in place, you could say, okay, well, yeah, this is where I want to be, but you just don't have it yet. You don't feel it, you don't see it. So it's hard to take those steps to make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you mentioned earlier on that there has been, three economic downturns that your business has had to manage through. A couple of them coincided with some children coming, and so that have been a little bit slower. You said was definitely not an unwelcome thing at the time. In this latest one, so with the pandemic and when everything kind of hit there back in March of 2020, how did that impact your business? And did you guys do anything different then, on the to try to rebuild or grow, on the other side of that initial shutdown, anyway, that our economy kind of went into?
Right. So for the first bit, and we see this often, like there's often a delay for us, when there's a downturn, because we're already like doing projects, and those projects are on the way. So there's often a delay. So there was a delay this time for us, like for 2020, we were busy like up to the end. But yeah, it was really last year, like last summer in 2021, our sales for the summer, so July, August, and September, were 50% of what they are usually. So that was a
Well,
big, that was huge, downfall. And we started seeing also some shortages on material, and that affected our project because we had, the raw material was delayed, so it was really hard to get steel, or it was hard to get certain sizes. So then we're not able to, custom build our projects, and then the
mhm.
clients are waiting. So it was just, a bit stressful for a while. And then usually, like, we have extra staff in the summer, and to help, with the peak of construction, and it was hard to find people because well, I think people were on CERB, and it was and people took time off, and it was yeah, it's almost we don't know where people were, but they were definitely not interested in working. So it was challenging. But it's picked up since the fall, and I think yeah, we're in a better place now. And I think 2022 will be a recovery year. And yeah, I think by the end of 2022, cross our fingers, we hope that we'll be yeah, out of the tunnel.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So what were you guys doing, I guess, differently, if anything, uh, when you started to see that those projects were not, basically filling your summer schedule? And so did you do anything to try to differently to try to generate more business? Did you pivot the business in any way to tackle new opportunities that maybe might be presented at that moment?
Yeah. So when we realized that sales were down early June, and compared to previous years, then we started email campaigns. We connected with clients and to see what was coming up. So we definitely reached out to our existing clients to see what potential work you know could be like for summer or fall,
Yep.
and that definitely kind of helped because usually there's enough work to that kind of automatically comes our way, but it wasn't like this this past summer. So yeah, we took it in charge to reach out, and that paid off in the fall. We had more projects coming in, and so I think that really helped.
Yeah.
um,
So really just doubling down on the business development relationship, reaching out to the people who you already have existing relationships with, and really trying to shake
Yeah,
loose some new business, right?
yeah, exactly. And reaching out to, yeah, contractors that we've never worked with, and like really keeping our eyes open, and seeing like, what opportunities there were in the valley right now for work. So that's
Yep.
what we did. And yeah, I think it worked.
So in terms of the challenges on the HR side, so trying to recruit people, trying to have the staff, when there was that, as a lot of people call it, the great exodus of the workforce,
Yeah.
was there any strategies that you were using there to try to overcome those challenges? Did you change any processes, automation, anything like that? Did you incorporate into your business that maybe changed your need then, or how did you guys adapt and adjust?
For the yeah, so I mean, for the hiring, we did more than we normally do, and we still were not successful at the time. And but we had more success finding people later in the fall. I think
Mm.
when things were a bit more back to normal with the labor market. Um, so that was good. So now we're fully staffed. But yeah, in terms of automation, I think we were pretty. That was, I guess, one of the lessons learned is that I think the more automated your business is, like the more resilient it is when you're going through like a crisis like this.
Mm.
We were pretty much online already, and like software wise and all of these things before it happened, and it definitely made us more solid and more resilient to go through this crisis, because everything was already kind of set up um, for like for us to work remotely, or for payroll, accounting, estimating. All of this was already you know in place, so it just made this a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in terms of like lessons learned, again, kind of circling back to that, oftentimes the best lessons come from the mistakes that we make as entrepreneurs along the way. Have you, had any mistakes that you'd be willing to share with our audience that, as a business owner, a new business owner, an experienced one now after 15 years,
Yeah.
any mistakes that you guys have done that there was a real learning opportunity there that maybe might help some of our audience?
Yeah. So definitely there's a big one this past year in 2021 that has a huge impact on our finance. So we were a little too trusting with a contractor that we had worked with before. So the contractor ended up committing fraud, and we
Oh
lost
no.
a significant amount of money. So, I guess the lesson is that you can have all the contracts and the law in the world, but at the end of the day, you really, if the person acts in bad faith, then, you can end up, in a really bad situation. So the lesson here is, you really have to choose carefully, like who you're doing business with.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that was a tough lesson. And we've changed a few things since then in our operation. Like we're definitely, like when we're taking on new clients, we look at the risks. We have kind of a risk assessment process in place, and we're financially also like, we're taking deposits, we're staying on top of our receivables. So yeah, it was a tough lesson, and we're definitely tweaked a few things, and we hope that we'll never be in that place again.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And so it sounds like you've adjusted processes on the client side, and assessing risk there, but then also the contractors that you're working with. And so this would have been a contractor who was working for you, or you were working for the contractor, the
We were
general.
working for the contractor, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So yeah, choosing
So you,
our clients carefully, and also like just looking at the life cycle of a project. Now we're just trying to. So if it's a project that's going to take like 2 or 3 months, we try to have for cash flow like some cash at the beginning, and some cash in the middle, and some cash at the end when it's completed. So we try to yeah, to incorporate like
yeah.
the requirements so that we're not waiting at the end of the project to get paid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've heard that many times in the construction industry where the general contractor isn't paying their subs, and then the subs end up going bankrupt because they're carrying so much of those costs. And then, the project winds up, you know, finishes, completes it, and there's no money there. And so, yeah, that can sink a lot of companies. So very, very important for us to be managing that cash flow and getting those incremental payments throughout. A question for you on that particular contractor, just out of curiosity, was that an established contractor? Was this a new relationship that you had, that just kind of ended up, it was happenstance where they couldn't pay their bills? I'm just curious about that part of it too.
Yeah, so it was a contractor that it was not a new client. It was a contractor that we did business with before, but for
Yep.
smaller projects. Yeah.
Smaller projects. Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. It's man, that's the worst thing, right? Is you do the work in good faith, and you pour your heart and soul and energy into it, as well as obviously the company resources, and then just not to get compensated for that. That's a really, really big deal for every business out there, regardless of the size, but
Yeah.
in particular, smaller businesses. Yeah.
Since
Well,
we're
thank you for sharing that, because that's a difficult one, and I think that's a lesson that for sure we want to try to help others avoid as best we can. And so I like your idea in terms of creating those deposits and interim payments, so that your compensation is a little bit more aligned time wise to the actual work and the costs that you're incurring as a business.
Yes, absolutely. Because yeah, nobody wants to work for free.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
So what's the future hold then, do you think? Like if you were to look into your crystal ball the next 5 years, what do you see you doing? Anything different? Is it still going to be growth, expansion into different markets? What's the 5 year kind of vision for Bocor Welding?
Right. So this past year, 12 months ago now, we started business coaching locally here in town. So, and yeah, it was a very interesting process. We spend time reflecting on ourselves this year, like who we are, what we're doing, what's unique. So we worked on our vision, our mission, and culture. And, we spend time kind of working or spending more effort and energy into marketing and business development. And we're seeing returns now. So it's been a really interesting journey. And this year more, just kind of more projects on that side. We'd like to establish like a customer relationship management system and a project management app for us just to facilitate, like all those projects that we have on the go that is cloud based.
Yep.
So that's kind of in the short term. And we're working on a succession plan for the business
Mm.
and to, again, like just to build more capacity and just more mentoring and eventually an exit plan so that we can sell the business either to employees or to a third party.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm seeing right now, and hopefully more time on the bike and more time skiing and maybe some more time off in the summer. Yeah.
Sounds really good. And on the topic of that transition piece and trying to figure out what the succession planning is going to be, and do you bring in employees as owners? We actually did an episode with another company who was in the construction industry as well, and he was sharing with us just the decision making that he had there, and then a little bit of that structure piece as to what they're doing in terms of transitioning to an employee owned and he has his own succession plan in place. And so you might want to tune in to one of those archived episodes, and so you can find those. And I guess this will be the plug that I will put in there for everybody else who's watching, is if you're interested in any of the archived episodes, head over to amplifyyourbusiness.ca and you'll see all of them there. And I think that particular episode was about this time last year, maybe 12-16 months ago or so is when we had interviewed him. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing. That sounds like one I should listen to.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate it, Evelyn, you taking the time today to share your story and explain a little bit about what it is that you guys are doing there and some of the lessons you've learned along the way. I'm sure it'll help a lot of the people who are watching this episode. And if anybody wanted to reach out to you guys to, book your services or to discuss maybe business, how would they find you then, Evelyn?
Yeah, well, Google, just type Cor Custom Welding.ca and you'll find us. All the contact information and information about our team is on the website. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Evelyn. And again, anybody who's interested in the archives, head over to amplifyyourbusiness.ca. And if you're a small business who's interested in being interviewed on a future episode, please reach out to us. We're more than happy to consider you for a future episode of Amplify Your Business. Until next time, everybody stay safe. And thank you once again, Evelyn.